Greetings, travelers. I'm Josh,
And I'm Kai,
and we're
the
the Genshin
Genshin
guys.
guys.
Welcome all. This podcast is for fans of Genshin Impact, the mobile game made by HoYoverse, formerly known as MiHoYo. Here we talk about our opinions, experiences, and dreams about Genshin Impact. If you like our show, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Music, Spotify, or wherever you are listening to the podcast. How was your week in Genshin, Bin Kahi?
My Klee is finally max level, and now I can focus on Hazo. So that's one hurdle I'm over now. But honestly, I am surprised how good my end game Klee is, especially with that Dodoko Tails catalyst. Because I'm doing like charge attacks for like 13,000 without even trying, and it's actually pretty good. I paired her with Kazuha just so I can get all the little mini grenades into one spot, and it's just it's just fun. I knew I was gonna like this character. Now I just gotta focus on a team for Hazel.
Oh yeah, like Klee, Klee is super fun. Like I was saying before, she's kind of clunky if you just play her, but mixed with a bunch of people like Kazuha, it's really interesting to see just all the explosions. And I love the lasers, honestly. Like I love her burst and the lasers. Um, yeah, and just like Kazuha, I think that Hazel fits into like any team comp. So I'm really curious to see what you end up making with him. But how about the event? How far have you gotten in the event?
So I finally finished all of the character backstories in the archipelago. I really want to talk about that this episode, but I'll wait. I'll wait for everyone to kind of finish because it does take kind of a long time to go through all four characters. But it's my favorite was Mona's character, like Mona's character backstory. I mean the activities were fun, and like a little bit of her story is also like really good, really relatable. But yeah, no, that's just my favorite so far. What about you?
Nice, yeah. So this week I've been working on that event. I'm only about halfway through. I'm at like official story and like the beginning official story. And it's really it's really cool like getting to know some of the backstory of like Xinyan. It's weird. I feel like we get so much Kazuha backstory recently that it's like okay, but like Kazuha is a really interesting character. So I'm glad that we can have more of him, especially as a character. He's just a really good character to have, really fun character to play. Um,
I
as
love
far
his
as like,
sword. So glad we
oh
got
yeah,
it.
and his sword. Yes, the sword. Oh man, the Freedom Sworn one, the
I gotta
five
figure out
star
what was
one.
the name again. No, the 4 star, the
Oh, the 4 star sword.
one we got from his story.
The event. The event.
It's a long name, yeah, because it has personality.
The other Kazuha event right before the other Kazuha event, right? Yeah. So, and then before that, we had the other event in Inazuma. That was also Kazuha was involved in that one too, right? So, Um, weird. But anyway, Kazuha's great. And as far as like other things outside the event I've been working on, I've been leveling up Aloy because ever since we had that conversation about like just level up character you want to level up, I just really wanted to level up Aloy because not only is like Horizon a really cool game, but like she's the only crossover character and I want to like support that and I think she's a cool character and even though she could be better like maybe for like she could be more fun to play if they just changed a little bit of things like her cooldown on her skill and stuff like that. She's still very usable and very cool and I never see her so I kind of want to just level her up so I'm loving her up. I finally ascended her to max ascension, but anyway, that's my week in Genshin. And so today we're talking about today's not going to be a super long episode, but we did have there is some really important updates that we wanted to mention. So I will just quickly introduce today's topics. The first of which is Genshin news, and the second of which is today our talk about lore so far, and our favorite parts about it, our favorite parts of the lore so far. So we're doing another lore episode. I think lore episodes are really great. Let us know how you feel about lore episodes. If you want us to do more, if you want us to do more like meta conversation about like builds and teams and things like that. Um, we're really open to different kinds of episodes. But for now, there's not there's so much lore happening right now, and Sumeru is about to come out, and there's about to be a lot more lore. So we both are really passionate about it. So let us know if you are. We are going to talk about it at some point or another. But this week, we want to talk about the Sumeru preview that just came out. Um, so hopefully you guys have seen that video. It's like a 3 minute trailer or so, where they show new areas of Sumeru previously unshown. So we're gonna get into that right now. So let's go ahead and get started with our Genshin news.
Dun, 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 dun.
All right, so the first thing we want to talk about on this segment, today's Genshin news, is about Sumeru, the preview that was just kind of shadow dropped to us overnight last night. Sumeru is coming very quickly. Lots of things are being revealed slowly, and we want to talk about the official video that came out highlighting Sumeru's multiple different biomes and areas and regions, different spaces and areas. So let's go ahead and we have actually some pictures from the like officially released pictures from Sumeru, and we're gonna kind of describe them as best as we can and talk about them and our thoughts about it and what we think they mean. So, Kahi, I'll let you take this one and go ahead and like just describe what we are seeing, and then let's talk about what do you think it means.
All right,
Go
so
for the
first
first
in
picture.
this lineup, yeah, we have a little gallery going. We're gonna go one picture at a time. They should be in order of appearance in the video, so if you follow along, you can kind of just scrub right through it. We just started at the first thing that kind of caught my attention. So here we have what looks to be like an inside of a cave-like structure, possibly maybe inside of a tree because of the walls and how the mushrooms, glowing mushrooms, are all kind of on the sides. A little bit of a broken tree stump in the far distance, but there's also some kind of fog or haze towards the ceiling or towards the sky. This looks like it's an indoor space, potentially underground. And what I like about this is what caught my attention, is that they're gonna. It looks like they're utilizing a lot more vertical space. They're going down further into the ground. They can have these enclosed spaces. It doesn't have to be all out in the open where everything can see the sky. It also adds to the mystery to it. It's like you don't know if something is way far above you, way far down below. You can actually kind of feel lost. Maybe some people like getting lost in these environments. It looks totally like overgrown, and it's just there's so much life in this place. So it's very, very different than any of the other previous biomes, just because of how full and lush it looks. So, I mean, Josh, like, what do you think about this first picture that we're looking at with all these trees and mushrooms in this little enclosed space?
Yeah, I like what you said about the vertical space. Definitely makes me think of the chasm and how, even though the chasm is underground, there's a lot of vertical space used in there. So, if they're exploring that concept more to a more open world area, like maybe this is like in the world instead of being like inside of an instance like the chasm. I think it's really interesting to like be able to like fall into this space and explore. It does make me think like it's gonna be like because of the previews that we saw, like a lot of these like mushrooms and things are gonna be like affected by different elements possibly. So there could be really interesting ways to traverse around this area instead of just climbing. So I'm also really interested in that.
All right, and one last thing about like this enclosed spaces. I mean, you have to remember about enclosed spaces because you can't actually see that far off into the distance. I mean, normally when you're up on the surface and you can clearly see like, okay, there's this mountain ridge, there's this mountain edge, and that's the end of the edge of the world. Okay, you kind of have this perceived end of the world. When you're in a space like this with jungles, the the feeling of endless, limitless, like infinite, like forestry and brush, it adds to this. I guess you could say like the psychological size of the world. Like you don't know like if there's way more trees out over here. You don't know if you're gonna get stuck in this one brand new cave just because you turned a corner. Like that the whole unknown actual scale of the space adds to the actual space, just the feeling of being a big area. So that's I like how they're using vertical spaces, nice closed spaces and caves and stuff. So I mean, speaking of scale, like we have short really short ways into the video, they have these little looking things, little sprout villages. And this is like, I don't know if we actually somehow do get shrunk, because just by looking at this picture, you think you're looking at like the ground floor of like grass, because you have all these little
Hmm.
seedlings and sprouts. But then we get introduced to the actual, locals, these tiny little seed-like, seed-like people. You see the little house, little hut growing from the little
Right.
sprout, and you have these seed people with hats. They're adorable. But I don't know how long this goes out. This could actually be, ironically enough, a really small part of Sumeru in the rainforest. But what are your impressions? Does this remind you of anything?
This one reminds me of Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap, where you get shrunk down and you have to like, navigate through like a giant world that's actually just a really, really small world. It has to do a lot with plants. And so this just gives me those like vibes, like you're saying, like what we get shrunk down, but at the same time, like it could just be Sumeru and it could just be gigantic, actually. So like I'm really curious about how like the dendro element plays into like this environment specifically. Like do we get shrunk down? Like I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, the next one we have this next picture. Now this is cool. This is a giant. We don't know if it's dormant or if it's sleeping or if it's completely like dysfunctional or non-functional. It's a giant robot just kind of like caked into the land with all this brush overgrowing on it and all this moss and grass kind of overgrown. It definitely looks like a ruin guard, but it is the biggest sized one we've ever seen in game. I really hope we get to see one of these things move, but it is
That would be
still
so
really
insane.
cool to just see it because you like it's one thing to see like dead giant, dragon bones because you're like, okay, that's a really big dragon. That's still cool. This one, we've seen things like these things before in the game. We see all these other constructs, all the ruin guards, all these other like, machine enemies. We haven't really seen a lot of other dragon enemies other than like the first one from like year one.
Hmm.
But this just gives you like this feeling of this is how the old world used to be. We had things like this walking around, you had constructs like this all over the place. It really begs the question of what happened way back then to make this something that we needed to make, or whoever needed to make. So, I mean, what do you think about this thing? Do you think this is a good guy or bad guy?
Oh man, so like I mean we're gonna get to probably the later part, but like there is well let me just double check here in our pictures. So there was another big one, right? So that we'll get to, but yeah, I'm really really interested in which one, like if there is one that is a good one and which one there isn't, or maybe they're all the same, who knows? But I just think it's really interesting how big it is. So they might make us like explore inside of it, or I don't know, maybe we'll activate it. How who knows? It's just it's crazy. Like it's really cool. That's like the size of a mountain basically. So yeah, I'm just interested to see what goes on regarding this robot in the future,
I mean, I have a feeling we're gonna go inside of it because if you look at the hand, you see like these rocks kind of pouring out of like a hole in its hand,
right?
which is kind of ground level. So it could be like the entrance into like the inside of the machine. That's what I think because I feel like we got to go into that, find the core, find out what was programming it, maybe activate it. Who knows? This could be
Right?
like, I mean, if this is a new area, like you know how we had Dragon Spine, you know how we had Enkanomiya. I mean, you have these additions to Sumeru, these separate zones. This could actually be where one of those zones kind of like alters and gets, terraformed or changed because we may have accidentally woken it up and now there's a new area in that same space. That might be cool. Kind of a stretch, but that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I think it'd be super interesting for sure. So what about the next picture?
Right, so we have this another picture. Okay, so there's we see the top surface world, huge, and I mean huge trees, roots like sticking up off the ground into a cliff that goes down into an abyss, and the trees go way high into the sky. This is what I'm talking about vertical space. You have like so much room to like run around, jump, climb. You definitely want to have a team set for exploration, like Zhao for like the climbing, or like maybe even Beto for like the swimming. But there's gonna be expect to do a lot of climbing because if you have to find something, you don't just run around. You need your stamina, but you need to definitely get up. You need to go lower. You really gotta explore this place. This has such a. I love the fog too, because you can't actually see where this kind of cliff ends or where this ravine ends. I think that's a little waterfall in the background, but this is huge, and not just the width, just the height and the depth. So, what do you think about this space?
Yeah, this kind of reminds me a little bit, this picture specifically reminds me of the island in Inazuma that got split in half by the Raiden's attack. And like there's like a huge like valley, like an opening in the middle of this area, and so it makes me interested to think if it was naturally formed that way or if there was like a reason that it's formed that way. Maybe there's like a water, like a river in the middle or something. It looks like there kind of is, but um, yeah, it's like a really interesting, really open area, like an open jungle area. So like I feel like it looks like there's like little houses in the trees too.
It's
So
not
there
too
might be
thick,
like a,
but
huh?
it's not too thick, but you can clearly see the sky. There's some space, there's some room to
Yeah.
breathe, but
But
it's
you
not
see
too
there's
claustrophobic.
little houses, right? Like in the trees
Under the left tree, yeah, little
and the right one
maybe one of
too.
those seed guys. It could
Yeah,
be
so
another house.
I'm curious if there'll be like a tree house area. I assume there will be because those are always awesome. Like a tree house community area, like a whole town up in the trees. Like that could be a thing. So I'm really curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, so we have an abundance of trees, and in the next picture we have a complete lack of trees or lack of a semblance of a tree. So we have like all these dead trees that we see, they're twisted with some kind of glowing core in the middle, but they kind of seem to be facing away from some kind of like crater, some kind of like lower valley perhaps. And in this one, from the video, there are these little black trails that kind of like come seeping from the ground, kind of floating up. It doesn't seem to be smoke because it's too straight, too like
Mm,
proper, too clean. So it's either like some kind of dark energy, maybe it's just some kind of residue of darkness from whatever came before it. For some reason, when I saw this, I thought, could this be like the ground zero of that, that experiment and blasphemy thing from the Harbinger trailer? It's
right?
like, is
It
are we
does look
looking at
like that.
aftermath? It does, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
because
like
there's
Dottore was like he was like burning like a giant tree, right? So like this looks like that could be the aftermath for that for sure.
yeah, we have dark clouds in the background, and even the tree way off in this distance. You see, the two trees closest to the camera are kind of like tilting, leaning towards where the camera is coming from. The tree in the far side, far away, is kind of leaning, going off into the horizon. So there's like obviously something is like pushing or like tilted them outwards from a certain spot, and that spot has a lot of like fog as well. They're using fog a lot. I don't know if they use this a lot in the other zones, but they're using fog a lot, and I can only assume it's because it kind of saves on like rendering power, so you don't have to keep your computer doesn't have to render all of this that far away. It can kind of like hide it like a fog of war kind of stuff. I don't know,
Well, I mean,
but
if you think
it
about it, like, up until now, they've had big open spaces with a lot of things. So
yeah,
I feel like any kind of decision they make for the atmosphere of a place, I feel like it's less technical related. It's probably more lore related, right? Like
yeah,
even
probably, yeah.
that, oh man, that's right. Like man, I want to have a conversation about this, but it's like a totally different thing. But like that I sent you a video about like the traveler's sword and that like he had a dull blade. Like he's had a dull blade ever since the first cutscene. So,
The generic
um,
sword.
yeah, he just had a generic sword, and everyone was thinking, oh, maybe it's because they don't want to show, like because they want you to use your own sword, or but like in the cutscenes, it's always a dull blade, and then like maybe they didn't want to use his sword from the beginning because like you don't actually have that sword, so like they don't want to show it in the cutscenes, so it wouldn't make any sense. They want to just make it not stand out, but like in the video, they talk about how you find out that your sister still has that sword. So, like, for the first year and a half of Genshin, people thought that the fact that Traveler had a dull blade in all the cutscenes was like some sort of technical thing, like, or they just wanted the weapon continuity to be a certain way, like, oh, like, your weapon won't show up here, blah 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 blah. But actually, there's a story reason for it. So I think that if they go that far to think about things like that without explaining it to us, I have a feeling that if the place is all foggy and is misty, maybe it's because there was a huge fire. Maybe it's because there is like a darkness like in this land, which is
True,
why we're
true.
going there. So I don't I mean I definitely think that they can figure out technical stuff. Like if they want something to be a certain way, they'll figure out the technical stuff for it. I don't think they're limited by hardware at this point. I mean, this game runs on the phone. Like,
That is
it's
true.
really crazy. Yeah.
The
So,
scale
but yeah,
scaling is
we'll
good.
see,
Yeah.
right? What's the next picture then?
Okay, now we
Oh, here we
jump
go.
to our first glimpses of the
Woo!
desert.
The
Oh, this is great.
desert. Oh my God,
This
dude! Everyone thought that
place.
Sumeru was gonna be the
Oh my
desert, and then
God.
it was a jungle, and now it's actually also a
Mhm.
desert. Yay!
Honestly, I was surprised that Sumeru wasn't a desert when we first
Same.
saw it because I thought it
Yeah.
was only going to be like desert people, but this is better. We get both. So this, okay, what intrigues me about this is um because you know me, I play Destiny a lot too. This looks
Oh yeah.
very, very similar to like a Warmind. For any of those, for any people listening, if you play Destiny, you'll know why this big, diamond shaped door underground with this color scheme looks familiar. Because you're talking about like a vault that locks away like something pretty much near God level. And of course, when you have like an Egyptian theme, they have a lot of underground tombs, they have a lot of catacombs, they have a lot of, hidden secrets and like, things that are heavily guarded. We have two like raw statues on the side with spears, obviously guarding something. They look like sentinels. But the fact that there's nothing else in this big cave, one pathway, it seems to be like an abyss on the sides, and one crack in the hole in the ceiling. So we found this. This is guarded. One door, one path. Something is behind this that is incredibly important, and I
Right.
have no idea what it is, and I love it.
All right. What do you think it is?
Somebody's there. I think that's a tomb. I think that's a tomb because
Mm,
something about it. I mean, anytime people think of like Egypt, anytime people think of ancient, Middle East areas with like sands and dunes and stuff, they're thinking of like ruins. They're thinking of like old buildings where like everything is kind of like washed away by the sands of time and stuff like that. So for this to be somewhat still intact because even the statues themselves, they're not cracked, they're not deteriorating. It's intact, it's well preserved. Something is being well preserved down there, being guarded by one path and nothing else. This is important. So for something to be this important has to be either a person or a treasure. I think it's a person. I don't know if it's a treasure. I want to
oh,
lean towards treasure just because of the whole like mummies in like in tombs. That's the
all
I
right.
keep thinking about that. I mean, what do you think it is?
I mean, I didn't know what to think until you just said treasure, and now I'm thinking it's like maybe that's where the Dendro Archon's Gnosis is.
Like, wait, you think it's separated already?
Maybe.
Wait, because okay, correct
Remember
me if
like
I'm wrong
what's
here,
his
but
name?
everyone has it in them. That's what I thought.
They're supposed to, but like I mean, A gave hers away hundreds of years ago, and Venti's was taken, and then Zhongli like traded his. Is that what happened? I forgot.
So, like the first time
Um,
Venti he got hit by Signora, and
right.
she pulled it out of him. So
Yeah.
that's what I thought the gnosis always resides within them. So like of course Zhongli had it, he probably was able to just take it out and just give it to them. I mean he kind of traded it, but
Oh, so
A,
but maybe
same thing
that's the
about
thing,
A, yeah,
right? So no,
probably.
A gave it away because she didn't need it. She gave
Did
it to
we see her
Scaramouche.
take
No,
it
she
out
didn't
of
give it to
herself?
Scaramouche. She said it. She said that she did. Like, oh, like I don't have it
Okay, so
anymore.
like it can, well obviously it can exist outside the person, but like
Yeah,
you could be right if
yeah.
the
Because like maybe there's
Dendro Archon separated
some
it.
circumstance. Yeah, like some circumstance that caused them to separate it, like willingly, not like forcefully. Maybe for protection. Because I mean, if you think about it, the Dendro Archon supposedly like um I don't know. I don't want to like do leaks, but like the Dendro Icon is supposedly the little girl that was talking in the trailer, and so if it's really like a little girl-esque Archon, even though it's an Archon, maybe she's not that strong. So maybe they have a different way to preserve her Gnosis than like her having it in her all the time for fear of
Well, you
someone
know
taking it
what?
from her.
You know what? You could be right because it also matches
Otherwise,
the theme. Because you have two
right?
places. We have a new area with like a dual continent kind of thing, like dual
Ah, true,
cities
true,
or
yeah,
like
yeah,
spaces. So if I mean, there's stark contrast too. If like the Dendro Archon is in the forest, and then if they sealed away the Gnosis far down in a vault because they didn't want to draw attention to themselves, and they wanted the enemy to go over there. And because you know that ruin guard, that ancient ruin guard,
yeah,
there's one in
yeah,
both places. So
yeah.
if that thing was kind of sent to like find it or like retrieve it, it makes sense why it's in both places as well. Because they only showed two, one in the desert, one in the forest. So
I mean, like, so
possibly,
is if Dendro is what it is, like Dendro is this representation of like life and green and plants and all this stuff, then why is there a desert in Sumeru? So,
because that brings
like
us to
maybe,
the other pictures that because there's
right?
another picture that could talk about that. So, but the next picture in this lineup in this gallery is we see like more of the architecture of the buildings in the desert, and this one in particular, it's a floating building, this kind of spire looking thing that's broken up. Again, there's like
Mm,
a big cavern abyss below it. It doesn't. There's no clear like entrance. It just looks like a really well kept obelisk shrine. It kind of looks like.
right? But everything's crumbled around it,
Ooh,
right?
yeah, everything kind of crumbles around it, but this one kind of is like the only one perfectly intact because it's floating, isolated by itself. I mean, what do you
Right.
think this is?
I mean, I don't know, man. Like this doesn't look like it's related to the
Yeah,
last
hard to
picture,
tell.
but like it also looks like this was the main building in a city that got destroyed because like everything around is destroyed. This
Hmm.
looks like the pillar, the main building. So maybe I don't know. I don't know. I really can't tell you. Like maybe
Little
it's the old
diamond, yeah,
kingdom,
little
the
diamond at the
old
top could be an eye.
the little diamond. Oh, true, true, true. Yeah.
This
Yeah,
could be
it's
their
hard to
new
say. Like
waypoints.
uh, yeah, right. Like I'm not even like it's so I don't know, it's so cool. It's just like everything that I think about when I see it is just like, oh, I think about like Egyptian history and stuff, like and like those different movies and shows and media that I've seen that have the same theme. But in the world of Genshin, what is it? I don't know. It's just like there was obviously an ancient civilization here, and that don't inhabit it anymore. So yeah, I'm just curious to see where it goes, how they tie it in.
And then this other picture is kind of ties into what you were talking about. Like, why would the Gnosis not be like kind of like exuding life like in the desert? Well, because here's the thing. In this next picture, we see like another pyramid, an actual pyramid, far off in the distance, and there's like is there's inverted pyramid. There's a pyramid going up that kind of like caps out and the tip is at the top, and then there's this diamond-like structure at the top of it, and above that is an inverted, like, smaller pyramid. But that inverted smaller pyramid above it it is animating this reddish glowing energy from the sky into that pyramid. So
It
it
looks
is
so nuts,
absorbing
right?
life. It looks nuts. It looks crazy.
It's so
I
crazy.
think because of what you brought up, this is just me speculating. I love to speculate, you know me. This thing is absorbing life. Now,
Uh,
the Dendro Archon could, of course, be the one that, gives out or like kind of redistributes life. But how does the Dendro Archon kind of get that kind of power? If the Gnosis is somewhere else, is that somehow related to like this vault thing or this where it's being stored? Because it is absorbing life and kind of keeping it so that it's ready to kind of just dish it out whenever it needs to. So it's absorbing the sky. I don't know if that's heat from the sky or if just clouds and it just kind of looks like a energy swirl, but what is it absorbing? What do you think?
I mean, it's like, hmm, like this could have to do with the experiment in blasphemy thing. So maybe this has to do with the fire that was going up into the air. Like like this is just like really like you know 100% pure random idea speculation, but like what if the dude he like so like Sumeru is like somehow connected. We don't know exactly how, but like the green side and the desert side are connected, right? Let's just assume that. And assuming that they're connected, this guy Dottore who's doing the experiment in blasphemy, he like sets fire to like the tree of life or whatever. You know, there's always like a tree of life in these kind of situations. And so he sets fire to this giant important tree, and that fire is like a special fire. Like it becomes like more than like the smoke and the fire that comes from it is actually not just that. It's maybe the essence of life of the Archon or something. And
That
then
makes sense. Yeah.
for some reason, this mechanism on this pyramid is absorbing that to repurpose it for possibly something else. That's my thought.
I
Because
like that theory.
where else would this giant
Mhm.
fire come from? Were you just absorbing the sky? Like it's so
Mhm.
weird, right? So it has to come from somewhere, and I think the only place that we know
Mhm.
that it could come from is the tree on fire. So that's my theory,
That that's entirely plausible. I would 100% believe it if the sky had some kind of like trail, like going off in a certain direction or leaning towards a
right?
certain direction.
Which it
However,
might.
it's
We
kind
just
of
don't. We haven't been
360.
shown that.
That is
Yeah.
true.
Well.
I like your idea. I really do.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about like repurposing a tree of life, soaking its
Yeah.
power through that ash, and then it just re puts it somewhere else. I mean, this machine could have
Yeah.
been built to do exactly that, and this is potentially the ancient enemy stronghold. That could be it. But it looks cool nonetheless. I love it.
Yeah. It's so crazy.
Okay, and
But
this
that's not
other
the last
picture,
picture.
this yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we have one or two more. This other one, you have the same thing in the desert. We have a little canyon, sand at the bottom. You have that same ancient ruin guardian stuck in that cave. Now, here's the interesting thing about this one. The hand is also still extended, but it's going through the canyon, almost like it was trying to reach for something. Because you
Mm.
can kind of see like it got caught, it got stuck, the hand's way out in front of it, and it just broke down right there. So this kind of feeds into that theory that I think me and you have this theory now, like the Dendro Archon was trying to run from something or was trying to
Oh,
escape
right, right.
this
Yes.
thing,
Yeah.
which now seems more credible because why would there be one of these in Sumeru in the jungle version, also with his hand, reached out and extended and then just kind of collapsed. It looked like it was crushed by a mountain. This one got stuck in a canyon. So both of these things have their arms extended out, reaching for something and
Mm.
their hand has a hole in it. So it is definitely trying to extrapolate something or like extract something, go through the arm, and both of these things failed. There's definitely going to be
Yeah.
more
Like
story to
like
this.
they're there for a reason, not just like randomly.
I mean, imagine if this was some random mob. That'd be crazy. Oh, this place is like
No.
ridiculously hard. And then yeah, the last photo is just comparing the two side by side. Same same construct, same guardian, same. They okay. Just from judging by this, they probably went down at the same time. If they went down at the exact same time, it's even more interesting because now they have like some remote energy source, and then they kind of just like failed on the spot, or something defeated them or trapped them. Who knows? But
Yeah. Well, the fact that they were like kind of doing the same motion, um, it kind of implies that, right? So we'll see if
mhm.
that's true or not.
Yeah. So those are the only like pictures that stood out to me and kind of stood out to you, Josh. But yeah, what's your overall impressions of that trailer?
What I love about this trailer is that it's like it finally showed us what we were kind of expecting of Sumeru to be like a desert area, and it's adding a lot of mystery as to why it's a desert area in the first place, and it's really interesting. Like I really like that they showed it this way. So yeah, I'm just really excited for the new area and the new characters because I personally like the Egyptian aesthetic. Like for
Mm-hmm.
like the guy that they showed in like the first story trailer. I believe his name is like Sino is like what people are saying, but it's not 100% confirmed. But Yeah, so really, really cool. And
One last interesting thing about the trailer, I just want to bring this up real quick.
mm,
We saw villages and people and NPCs the in the forest and the jungle, but we didn't see
mm,
anyone on the desert. So we don't know if it's
that's true.
100% abandoned or if they're somewhere else hidden. Maybe they're underground as well, but we didn't see any NPCs or people at all. It's like a barren wasteland. We only saw ruins.
True.
That's
It's
an interesting point.
assumably no one living there, right? Cool. Yeah, I'm oh
Ready.
man, I can't wait. Ah, so excited. So, um yeah, so thanks Kahi for going through those pictures, the gallery. So, if you guys want to see those pictures yourself, go ahead and watch the trailer if you haven't already. I hope you have because it is really good preview for what's to come. If hopefully you watched it before you listen to the segment, but if not, then go ahead and watch it again, or go ahead and watch it for the first time, and then go ahead and re-listen to the segment because uh, we want to know what your thoughts are on this new area too. What do you think the connection between the green Sumeru and the desert Sumeru are? Like what theories do you have? Go crazy. We want to hear it. Super interesting. We nobody knows so far. So I mean, let's talk about it before we start knowing. Once the story comes out, it's going to be settled. So let's let our imaginations run wild. So all right. So that is does it for today's Sumeru preview in our Genshin news section. One more piece of news I wanted to share was directly related to Sumeru, which is there was actually a leaker of the beta on Twitch. And I'm not gonna say his like account or anything because if you're not interested, I really don't want you to. But if you're interested, you can go look it up. As of right now, there is a recording of his stream. It's about 2 hours long. He was streaming the newest beta in Sumeru with the new characters, showing off the new enemies. Uh, Definitely not allowed. I'm pretty sure, because he just is just showing it to just showing way too much, not in the way that Hoyoverse probably intends. A lot of people are, saying that he might get banned, that worried that he might make it harder for the community to get into the beta tests, etc., etc. I don't know. All I want you to know is that it happened and that it exists. So you can look it up if you're interested. If not, what does this mean for the future of beta testing for leaking? We don't know. So um, his channel was by the way, he's a Spanish speaker, so his stream was all in Spanish. But he had like fully unfiltered gameplay from the beta. So just so you know, that did happen. So that was some news that just happened too. I just found out about that about an hour ago. So yeah, so that is our Genshin news topics for today. Hopefully you are all doing the event. Don't forget, it ends in like 30 days, so you still have a lot of time. But next week we'll probably talk about the event a little bit more. But for the rest of today's episode, we actually the idea for today's main part of the episode, the our favorite parts of our lore, is actually coming from a Twitter user who reached out to us on Twitter, and his name is at forlorng, or sorry, at forlorng ng, and his question for us was, from a story lore perspective, who is slash who are your favorite characters and why? So this conversation got us. This started to spark conversation between me and Kahi, and so we wanted to talk a little bit about our favorite parts of the lore so far that we know. So I'll go ahead and ask the question. Kahi, you answer, and then I'll go ahead and answer. Okay, does that sound good?
Alrighty.
All right. So first off, Kahi, from a story slash lore perspective, who is your favorite character and or characters and why?
So I put my response in to that same tweet. However, I definitely want to elaborate on that here. So my favorite character from a story, lore, and just kind of preference is Zhongli. Now, everyone loves this guy, the CEO of Geo. He is powerful, he's intelligent, he's logical, he's fair, he has
He's sexy.
methodology. Yes, he's that indefinitely. I like all of his voice actors. I know some people don't like
Same.
maybe like the English, some people don't like the
Oh, English is
Japanese.
great.
I don't know. Yeah, they're all
I
good.
will have order. So
See,
good.
it's a good voice. Some people can make the argument it doesn't match, and that's fair. Whatever. But Here's the thing.
Each their own.
Yeah, exactly. The calm-headed, level-headed characters are like they're controlled chaos. You know they can throw down whenever they want to, but they choose not to. This is a guy who knows he can end the entire city of Liyue, but chooses not to. Because obviously he likes the place. He likes everything there. He made Liyue. He is literally the founder of it. But his personality kind of revolves around his, kind of stoic, his stoic attitude, like kind of lack of spikes in emotion, which is good. He's his whole like, um, I guess you could say his driving force is like contracts, fulfilling tasks, fulfilling, promises. He keeps his promises because he looks at them as, you know, giving him purpose to continue on. He's one of the oldest archons. I believe he's the second oldest archon.
Mm.
I could be wrong on that, but he is very, very old. No one really knows this because, he's kind of blended into society at this point. Um, However, he also has a very odd view of money. Well, odd, compared to other people. So he views money as simply a means. And for those of you who kind of forgot or don't know, he literally created Mora. Mora is named after him. He is called Morax, the Overlord Rex Lapis. He's he's the founder of money and currency and all humanity. This guy's probably had more of a hand in like cultivating human society than anyone else. I mean, everyone else maybe have like terraformed the planet or whatever, but this guy actually made a means of, you know, growing in an economy or like an actual civilization. This guy has, very simple goals. He likes to just carry on. He likes to do whatever he wants to. He's not a slave to money. He doesn't really seem chained to anything other than his own, personal belief system. So he's a calm, level-headed dude, super powerful. Even after losing his gnosis, he still has enough ability to kind of like fish Zhao out of like another entire like, sub whatever, what was that place called in the chasm? He was able to like kind of fish him out of that abyss reality thing that was like
Oh
kind of
yeah.
he still had enough power to do that, just like on a whim. So like this guy's just cool in all categories.
He's
But
just OP.
yeah, he's OP. Also, I mean, kind of like at a hint of the future, he actually made the deal with the Cryo Archon for his Gnosis. He willingly gave it up. It's his same view as money. He doesn't need that because he knows, okay, if I'm going to give you this, give me something equivalent in value. We have no idea what he gained from that deal, other than he made a deal and Signora was just leaving. So it's enough to make all of the enemies just kind of like, okay, we're good. We're gonna leave this alone. Either it's not like a physical thing. It may have been just like a pact or a contract of non-aggression, but we just don't know. He might be hiding an ace up his sleeve, which makes him even more conniving because he has he has this unknown ace, which is kind of like some other characters we're gonna see when we go to Snezhnaya. But yeah, that's my favorite character. I
Schneider.
love this guy. What about you?
Nice. Yeah, so for me, it's funny that you mentioned like that he is what did you say? I'm trying to remember.
Morax, Rex
Yeah, wait.
Lapis,
Wait, no, wait,
mm,
wait. You said that he something about his character.
like
Like
level-headed,
his
logical, fair, contract enforcer. He has a lot of stuff.
Okay, well let me just talk then. So for me, I like my favorite character is Raiden A, and it's not just because her female voice actress in Japanese is my favorite female voice actress, but it's also because her story is like laden with a bunch of like self-reflection and self-development. And like one of the things that's really interesting about her is that, she has her history as like, hopefully you've done Inazuma's story up to this point, listeners, but she has this history where she like was really trying to chase eternity, right? That's her ideal. Oh, that's right. You said about Zhongli that he has an ideal, like his ideals, right? And Venti also has his ideals, right? Freedom as an
Mhm.
archon.
Yep.
And so the interesting thing, and I realized this moreover when, and it's a lot clearer from when just shout out to YouTuber Tevat Historia for making a small video about this. But like Venti and Zhongli are already developed. Like they've gone through growth as their time as through their time as
Mm.
archons and through their
They're
lives
old.
before that. They're very old. And A is also very old. And the thing is that A though has shut herself off, and so and was not able to grow and develop, and so her development arc actually starts after the Inazuma story ends. When you go on her first character quest, where you go on like
That
a
was
walk
fun.
through the town with her, right? And it's like the start of showing that she's realizing that like change is inevitable, and she only realizes it then because she's unable to go through this realization when she's stuck in her ideals of eternity. So she is the only archon so far who is actively challenging their own ideals, and so she has to develop through this going forward, like from now. And that's like a really interesting part about her story that like captures me because she's OP. Everybody's OP. Like the Archons are OP, but like she is, like you see her developing like in front of you, like as part of the story. And what I think is really interesting as someone who studied Japanese history is that, her like growth and development is like somehow sort of tied to Japan. It's as a whole culturally to where I mentioned this in the last podcast, but like Japan has a history similar to Inazuma. Well, actually, Inazuma has a history similar to Japan, where Japan actually closed itself off to the world from visitors for a long time. And during this time, like they developed their own culture. This is like hundreds of years, right? And they like developed their own culture and were like kind of developing it into the Japan it is today, this very homogenous culture where everybody identifies as like I am a Japanese person and this is my history and this is this. Unlike other countries and cultures who have a constant influx of immigrants and different connections with outside countries, so where their culture is constantly evolving, Japan evolved its culture within itself, and Inazuma is sort of similar to that. And but like in further, like Inazuma is changing even within itself. But then A is stuck in her, infinite plane at the same time. So she's actually more behind the rest of the Inazumans. So, like, there's like these like layers of people understanding change and understanding their ideals and their like mental snapshot of what is like normal and what is the future going to be like. And I think that Raiden, um, is really interesting when it comes to like an Archon character. Like so far, I think we've only gotten three of them, but I really like her story and how it kind of ties into Japan, but also Inazuma at the same time. So that's my favorite character. I'm really curious to see where her story quests go from here. Obviously, she went through a lot of loss. She went through a lot of things, but she is staying strong and embracing change at this point in her character development. So I think it's really cool.
You mentioned about her personal development, how she kind of like shut herself off, kind of like self-reflection, looking internally and within herself. You know, Venti and Zhongli had enough time out there in the world to kind of like mold their own personality. They kind of maintained that same kind of personality over time, but they eventually leveled off into just being chill. I mean, you have
Yeah,
Venti, he's
exactly.
just going around drinking. You have Zhongli, who's going around sipping tea, and then just kind of going about watching all the happenings throughout the day. I mean, all both of them are experienced enough to know that I don't have to fight all the time. I have all this power. I don't use it. I am a god. I don't have to be anything else to anyone else. But they've gone through that developmental process. Raiden, sorry, Raiden, A,
Uh-huh.
she's kind of like been stuck in that same mindset. Her whole thing of eternity makes sense. Her personality
Right?
stuck for all those years. And has that helped her people? And maybe, maybe not, but she's maintained like the sameness for all this time. So yeah, like you mentioned, we finally get to see her develop. And because we show up, we kind of force that change, which is kind of something we wanted to talk about in a little bit as well. What was that question that you put that you wanted to discuss after this one?
Oh yeah. Um, so then moving on into the next question, what story was the most memorable or like had the most impact on you since Genshin launched and why?
All right, so I know my moment, but did you want to take this one first, and then I'll go second?
Sure. So,
Okay, go.
um, I mean, mine is like directly comes off of my answer. So with Raiden, and I think that fighting right with Raiden, every part of it. Like my favorite cutscene was when like, she's in front of it's like actually the puppet Raiden and she is in front of the statue and you're there with Toma and he's gonna get like his vision taken when you go to stop and all this stuff happens. It's really, very cool cutscene. Hopefully you've seen it. And also the parts where you kind of just see how overpowered Raiden is. Like when she can create this alternate reality and then she can like she took down Signora with one slash um every time we have like some kind of fight with Raiden, especially involving the infinite plane and her weapon, the Musoishin, like those are just so interesting to me. Like the fact that can create these alternate realities kind of reminds me of like Jujutsu Kaisen, where they can kind of make their own alternate realities too. Pretty cool. But yeah, so that's pretty simple for me. I just think it's super cool. Every time I see it, it blows my mind. What about you, Kahi?
Well, yeah. Before I talk about mine, yeah, you mentioned the fight. Yeah, that kind of fight had story in it. Even the place you were fighting had story in it. The moves had story in it. Like the way she attacks matches her personality. Kind of evasive, but like sudden strikes, because that's kind of her element. I mean, when you to compare it to the Tartaglia fight, like when you first meet him and you fight him inside the Chamber of Gold. I mean, he has like three phases, but it doesn't really give much about his personality other than he's a little bit cocky because he kind of like retreats and he kind of has like his hands up in the air like, hey, what's the matter you? I mean, he doesn't have a lot of personality in that fight. As time goes on, like all of these fights, all of these battles have, story behind them. They're choreographed in a way where it tells you about the person you're fighting or about the enemy you're fighting, which is kind of like what leads into to my memorable moments. It's the battles of Liyue versus the sea monsters. Both parts, the part one and the part two, both parts involve the Jade Chamber. But here's why this was a big turning point for me, or like one big memorable moment. Genshin, it's showing that Genshin has the capacity to evolve. The story has a capacity to evolve. The first battle with the Jade Chamber versus the sea monsters is when, all of the, Adepti, and all the old gods of that whole area kind of come to the shoreline to kind of push back the encroaching sea monster. And yeah, that was you could kind of see like what kind of power it takes, what kind of strength it takes to defeat an enemy like that. But then, even at part one, they kind of talked about, okay, the era of gods is coming to a close. We're kind of leaving it in the hands of humanity. That was fully realized as far as Liyue goes in the second part, where that last sea monster comes back. Jade Chamber has to be rebuilt. But in that particular battle, same thing. It looks the exact same as before. But when it comes time for the final blow, it was all just humans. There was no magic really involved in that defeat because you had all of these, you had tactics, you had Beto's ship. Finally, Beto's kind of in the big spotlight. I love it. I mean, you have you have like all of these traps set by Kaching and like her troops and her division, and then you had the ships out there, and then you have Ningguang again. kind of like crashing the Jade Chamber. She knows what it takes to win. And everyone's willing to kind of, put themselves on the line and defeat this thing without the gods' help. They were watching, but they knew, okay, no, this is their time. That moment, that big moment that kind of spanned a couple months, between patches, that tells you it's their time. The whole era, that old world that Piero from the Harbinger's trailer was talking about, might be referring to like the era where there was a lot of gods, a lot of power being thrown around. Maybe that's what they want. But this time it's the humans' turn. So you have people who are kind of pushing towards progress and modernity, and then we have all these other people who are like reminiscing about like the ancient powers and the ancient things and this and that, old world this, old world that. So you can kind of see these two sides. Like, yeah, old world is cool. I would love to like see just forest gods kind of running around here, but then I also understand
Mhm.
like there's a lot that the humans themselves can bring to this planet, and you can kind of see it being shaped as we go along. I mean, this is also a good foresight because a lot of the empires we're going to see coming out in the future, they're very mechanical driven, very futuristic machinery. You have the Harbingers and all of their well developed nations. You have Fontaine after that, and then you have all these other nations way out there. So we're seeing an evolution of the technology and the humans themselves. And now where's the convergence is like, is the gods gonna become offended by this? Are they gonna appear because of we're progressing too much? But it's a the turning point was for me was that Jade Chamber versus the sea monsters. That's kind of where like you have this slow ramp up to like a bigger conflict in the future. I know I'm rambling a lot, but that right there
Why we have a
was like
podcast.
my favorite. That's why we have a podcast. I can ramble as much as I want.
And hopefully people will take something out of it. Because yeah, it's really interesting.
All
Like
right.
um the the relationship between the gods and the non-gods in this like game story. Like we don't know much about Celestia yet, but like, the Archons and stuff, like where they come from and how people can ascend to become Archons, like how all this like history of Teyvat, like we don't have like a 100% clear picture of it. And then you throw in like the Adepti and you throw in like, you know, I don't know, the like like for example, like Venti has like a direct connection with his people, but they don't know that he's the Archon because of his like, ideals of freedom. And Zhongli, like, I don't know, like fake killed himself, like, you know, to for whatever reason. And so
They didn't want to be
like
worshipped.
yeah, he just like I mean like I don't know what took him that long to decide that, but he just decided that after like, they had rituals and all this stuff around him and then he's like, nah, I don't want to do that anymore. And then like, the Shogun is also like similarly like directly related, but like her word is the end all be all. And even though the people of Inazuma treat her a certain way, um, she is unable to like I don't know, like well the part like I was talking about with her development, like she's unable to see exactly what is the best for the people outside of her own ideals of eternity, which is why she's trying to reflect on what her values of eternity are and how they actually affect her people. So, like, I think it's really interesting, like how these so-called gods affect their people, and then there's the whole thing with like the elements and like the visions, right? Like visions in Japanese are called the eyes of God. So it's really interesting um, to have that distinction in Japanese, where I mean I know the game is originally Chinese, but like just calling it a vision and it's granted to you by higher power. But then in Japanese, it's being called Eye of God. Like, there's sometimes an extra nuance there that we don't get in English. So in Chinese, I'm assuming it's similar because Chinese and Japanese are similar in that sense. But I'm really curious to also see where we go from here. And I think that part that you mentioned, the fight against the sea monsters and how the Adepti and stuff kind of just stood by and watched and didn't feel like they needed to help because the humans got this, and also the half Adepti, I guess. But it's very
And they
you
kind of
know?
helped.
Yeah, it's very interesting, like the dynamics. I'm definitely curious to see where it goes from here. But yeah, cool. That's a cool moment. I mean, geez, like there's so many good story moments. So, if you listeners, like if you're have you have a favorite story moment you would love to share with us, feel free to tweet at us or to send us a review or comment. That'd be awesome. We want to know. So, the last part of our lore conversation for today, let's talk about the it's funny. I thought this was going to be like a shorter episode, but it's actually like not that short. Um,
Surprisingly.
the next part is what are some lore bits that you think most people may not know, or like what are some lore bits that you wish more people talked about? So, go ahead, go for it, Kahi.
I mean, this is small. This is like the smallest like bit of lore information that seems to have no meaning, but to me it does have a lot of like meaning when you like dive into it. So Ning Wang grew up poor and she knows how to fish and cook her own food. So that doesn't mean a lot when you look at it on paper. However, after seeing everything that you have experienced with Ning Wang, she's head of was it Liliue Qixing, the Changhuang, or whatever her official title is. She's basically like the actual political ruler of Liyue. And she's always in like that very poised, professional kind of like ruler personality. And then when you see her origins, like, wait, she grew up poor on like a small little hut outside the city and just fishes herself. Wow. Okay, you can kind of see like that's definitely a big change. Okay, that kind of gives more, weight to like how she became, or how she got to her position. She doesn't just get born into it. See that approach, that assumption. People look at these characters when they first meet them. They get a first impression. They're like, okay, she's like very very pompous or something. She's very like strict or mean. Okay, she probably has been like that for a while. But then you get this one piece of information from her past history. It opens up so much more questions. It adds more depth to that character. And I only know this because I did her hangout. Small little bits of information like this in the hangout series. And Josh, did you do any of the hangout series yet at all?
No,
No, right?
no.
See, little pieces, little lore pieces can be
Yeah,
found in the Hangout series. So I kind of wish
yeah,
more people did them just for the heck of it, but I do it just because
yeah.
of,
I'm gonna
the
do a
free
bunch of them
privilege
soon.
items. Hmm.
Yeah, I just like got really interested in the lore, especially recently, and um, to be honest, like I've been playing Honkai as well, and I'm excited to see if and how and when the Hoyoverse ties in this universe to their other game because they seem like they're tying the new Honkai games together, but like I think it's very possible that they tie in this game too to like as like a multi-universal thing or something like that. So like I'm just been really interested in the lore and I think that they like really like hiding like they really think about the lore for their games and I'm really curious to see what other information hides behind the hangouts because like you haven't finished all of them either, right?
Not all of them. I have a lot of, okay, maybe all of the males. I didn't do that at
Okay.
all. Nope. No interest.
Yeah, so but I'm curious to see like the story behind them, which leads me to like my next one, which is like I kind of wish there was a hangout for this, but maybe I'll find out more eventually. Which is my lore is more not less it's less about like or maybe people don't know, but like supposedly uh Shunha. So I really like Shunha, right, as a character. I like her design and everything like aesthetically, but as a character, she's really interesting because she was raised by Adepti, but she is not an Adeptus, so she doesn't have the same like physical traits in that like she lives a long time or whatever. Like she's just a human, like 100% human, and apparently from the same family as Chung Yun, and there's not really much like when they announced that or they said something about that like at the beginning, there was like a one-off line about it and then I never heard anything about it again. And
What
then
the
they
auntie?
you Yeah, like you see her backstory and that she was part of the same uh like group of village or whatever that practiced the same exorcism techniques that like Chung Yun's family did. But there's no like direct interaction between them, right?
Not in her story. However, I do know like Shinho was like regarded as a cursed child, and she was kind of like cast out. She ended up in this cave, and she was attacked. But she
Right.
actually
Right,
got
right.
so like violent. She actually killed the monster that was trying to attack her. But then she just kind of stopped and just wailed right there. But I mean, you there's a lot of story to that. I mean, the whole Exorcist family. Are we gonna see more of them? Because
Yeah.
for Chung Yun to say that she's his aunt, that means doesn't Shenhe have siblings? I didn't even hear about that
Yeah,
in
so
her story.
that's what I think is like the thing I want people to talk about more is like Shun Ha's relation to Chung Yun's family and then just Chung Yun's family in general because we don't know anything about them. They're just kind of there and it's yeah, it's just like a thing, you know, like that I always thought about because I really like Shun Ha's design. I was like, wow, I really want to like learn more about Shunha. And then I did her story, and then there was a story with like the Adepti and Yunjin and all this stuff, and then I still don't know anything about how she is related to Chung Yun. Like, so I'm kind of like I want to do Chung Yun's hangout and see if it says anything. I haven't done any of it, so from now, hopefully we will both become more and more versed in the lore as we have these discussions, as we look up the things ourselves. Um, but I mean, that's one thing that I think is really interesting that they don't talk
Well,
about.
before
The other thing
before
that
we
I
move
just thought
on,
of. Oh,
yeah,
okay, okay, go go.
yeah, before I move on, since we're still on Shenhe, you know about her earrings, right?
What about her earrings?
Earrings. So the the crane gave her those earrings to keep her violent,
Oh,
nature
yeah, yeah.
on
Yeah, this is
check.
part of
Yeah,
her story. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I kind of want to see her take it off.
Go
I
berserk.
want to
Yeah,
know what
yeah.
that looks like.
Yeah, I'm really curious because like that had to have been related to why she was cursed, right? So like you probably only see it as a kid, but I'm curious about why she got like I'm just curious about it. Like just want to see more about it. Um like one of the other random things that I think about sometimes in this game is that there are many, many half animal people that is never explained in any capacity. Like
Leona, still
like
nothing.
Diona, Goro, like Sucrose, like what is Sucrose anyway? She's like a
Lee,
dog supposedly. Like like I don't like they have paw prints on their clothes, but that doesn't count. Like they're it's just really interesting to see like that there are these characters. Like I know the Adeptus people have their things, which makes sense to me. But
Ganyu.
like like Yanfei and Ganyu, like Yanfei has like the horns, and I think Ganyu has horns too, right? So
Be honest, I
yeah,
didn't
it's like,
realize John Fay had horns.
oh really? Yeah, yeah. So Yanfei has those
Did not
horns.
know that.
And it's really interesting. And then like, they just have the more obvious ones like Sucrose and Goro. And then they have Kaching who has like hair that looks like ears but is just hair supposedly. So that's weird also. But
Good
yeah,
hiding.
like there's those characters exist, but like there's no reference of like animal people being a thing. Like so in fact, I don't know how many animal people there are besides the actual playable characters. Like, does Diona's family have ears too? Like, and a tail? Like, Diona has a tail, man. And so does Goro. So, like, it's like, why don't we talk about this? Why is this never mentioned? So, I want to know more about that. Um, and just from like a personal standpoint, this is something I always talk about with my friends, but like, and my wife, but like the Traveler, I feel like the Traveler is like started with the role of this silent protagonist and is like slowly getting more and more personality as we go through the game. That I kind of just wish they start giving the Traveler fully voiced lines in the story cutscenes because like if you go into the Traveler's profile, you can like hear them talking to Paimon and it's great. Like you can hear them talking. They have personality and they imply that the Traveler has personality, but like it's all through text, which obviously can be like misconstrued or interpreted differently between different contexts. But I wish that they would give the traveler their personality and put it front and center and just make it like forget the silent protagonist act. Like let's just make the traveler a character you're playing as and they talk and they're sassy and they're whatever. Like that's like their whole thing. So I don't know. That's just something I think about that I feel like the Traveler should be talked about more. Traveler is awesome, and the Traveler's story is so mysterious, and we're playing as the Traveler, but we are not the Traveler. So, it's not. I don't know. It's something I think about a lot because like I wanna talk more about the Traveler, and as we find out more, I'm sure we'll get more people that are excited about playing as them and everything. But yeah, I don't know. I just wish more people were talking about Traveler. So. Yeah. So do you have any last things before we move on to the to wrap up the show? Kahi?
I believe so. When everyone, for anyone who hasn't finished the archipelago quest, like all four backstories, really try to listen to the voices that come up. Anything that they say is a hint at the future. I really can't wait for for Josh to finish that whole quest because there's a certain character that was teased and it's really good.
Okay, well, I'm gonna hopefully finish it this week, so that sounds fun.
Pay attention. A lot of these little lore things can get lost. I mean, there's a few things that I completely missed about some of these characters' backstories, and that's fine.
Yeah,
I'm okay with doing that. I just don't want to lose track of the main plot. I
of
want to know
course, yeah,
why
the
this
A
thing
story,
happens.
right?
Yeah. We all know why the
Yeah,
Harbingers are cool because we've seen two of them, and they were flushed out or three of them, and they were flushed out over a long time. Then
right.
suddenly that happened. That's why it was popular. So I don't want to miss the little things over time.
Yeah, so let's I want to do it, man. Let's become well versed in the lore. The more we talk about this stuff, the more we watch videos and do our own research by just playing the game and finding out stuff. Um, And then let's talk about it here on this podcast. And if you're interested, let us know and or just keep listening and we will deliver with the podcast lore stuff because it is very interesting. And we might eventually have guests on the podcast to talk about lore as well, which would be so cool. I would be so excited about that. But yeah,
Lesson,
if
live
you're
lesson.
dude, imagine like if we get like the voice actors or yeah, other YouTubers, that'd be so cool.
Good to network.
Yeah, and also just be fun to converse about Genshin because we love Genshin. So it's so great. Okay,
And as
so
far as like lore questions and lore things, like, is there a question that you have for the audience, perhaps? Maybe something you want them to know or something you want them to look forward to?
yeah, well, that leads me perfectly into my outro then, which is my community question for you guys this week is what is your dream showdown, your dream duel? Which two lore characters do you want to see face off in a well thought out, epic pre-rendered cutscene? Like, not just like you see them fight or you play as one and you fight the other one. I mean, like you watch them fight to the fullest of their abilities. It's super thought out about who would win. We will answer our answer to this question next podcast, but we want to hear your responses and we will read your responses on the podcast if we see them in time. So please let us know who do you want to see in your dream showdown? Which two characters from the lore? It can be characters that are playable, characters that are not yet playable, characters that have already left. Just let us know at either on Spotify, we'll be adding the community question to this podcast episode, or tweet at us at Genshin Guys Pod. So that wraps up the show for today. Shout out to Tevat Historia, the YouTube channel, for their lore videos, and I'm going to be watching a bunch more of them this week, and hopefully doing my own research as well to learn about the lore. And everybody, thanks for listening. Leave us a comment and a review. If you leave a 5-star review in the form of a question, we might answer it on the next episode of the podcast if we see it soon enough. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are listening. Follow us on Twitter once again at Genshin Guys Pod, and may all of your roles, your wishes be granted. See ya.
Enjoy!